What if the reason we struggle to find the meaning of life is that we're looking for the wrong kind of thing? We imagine meaning as an answer, a sentence hidden somewhere in the universe. Maybe it's buried in an ancient book, or maybe a philosopher wrote it down in German and made it 400 pages longer than necessary. Maybe scientists will eventually discover it floating between two galaxies. And once we find it, everything will finally make sense. But perhaps the meaning of life is not an answer at all. Perhaps it's a pattern created by what we pay attention to or who we connect with and what we contribute before our time runs out. That may sound less dramatic than receiving a personalized mission statement from the cosmos, but it also has far more usefulness. Because when we say my life feels meaningless, we usually are not complaining about the absence of a perfect philosophical theory. We're usually describing our actual Tuesday. We wake up tired, we do work that feels disconnected from anything we care about, we have connections without saying what we really think, and we consume hours of information but understand ourselves no better than we did before. Then we lie in bed wondering why life feels empty. But the problem may not be that the universe failed to provide meaning. The problem may be that our daily life contains very little that produces it. Meaning is not only a belief, it's also an experience. And certain experiences seem to create it more reliably than others. The first is attention. To live meaningfully, you first have to notice that you're even alive. That sounds obvious, but much of modern life is designed to help us avoid doing exactly that. We rush through meals while watching something. We walk through a beautiful place while staring at directions on a screen. We spend time with people we love while mentally replying to an email from someone we can barely tolerate. We are physically present, but psychologically we're buffering. Attention changes that. It turns an ordinary experience into a real one. A conversation becomes meaningful when you actually listen. A sunset becomes meaningful when you stop treating it like a background decoration for a photograph. Even pain can become meaningful when you examine what it's trying to tell you instead of immediately trying to escape it or numb it. Attention says, this moment is happening and I am here for it. But that doesn't solve every problem. But it prevents us from sleepwalking through the only life we know that we have. The second source of meaning is connection. Human beings live inside separate minds. No one else can completely experience your memories, your fears, or your strange internal arguments, or the imaginary conversations that you keep winning in the shower. We are surrounded by people, but parts of us remain inaccessible. That is why genuine connection can feel so powerful. For a moment, something private becomes shared. You tell someone the truth about what you are afraid of, and instead of leaving, they understand. You hear another person describe a feeling that you thought only belonged to you. You make someone laugh at exactly the moment they needed it. Connection does not eliminate loneliness permanently. Nothing does, but it creates bridges across it. And this may explain why a life filled with activity can still feel empty. Activity is not the same as connection. You can attend 20 events, exchange hundreds of messages, and remain almost entirely unknown. Meaning requires more than contact. It requires presence, honesty, and the willingness to be seen without controlling every detail of how you appear, which is inconvenient. Other people are unpredictable. They misunderstand us. They disappoint us. They occasionally send voice messages that should have been two sentences. But without connection, life becomes a private performance with no audience and no fellow actors. The third source of meaning is understanding. There's a particular satisfaction in making sense of something that once confused us. It might be a scientific question or a historical event, a pattern in your relationships, or the reason you become irrationally angry whenever someone says, we need to talk. Understanding creates order when there was once chaos. It expands the world. That is why learning can feel meaningful even when it has no immediate practical benefit. You may never need to know how stars form or why civilizations collapse or how an octopus solves problems, but each discovery pulls back a small section of darkness. Understanding ourselves matters just as much. Sometimes a life feels meaningless because we are living according to desires we never examined. We pursue a career because it sounds impressive. We chase money without deciding what that money is supposed to provide. We remain in relationships because leaving would force us to confront uncertainty. Then we wonder why success feels strangely disappointing. Understanding helps us separate what we genuinely value from what we are simply taught to want. But attention, connection, and understanding are still incomplete without a fourth element: contribution. At some point, meaning has to move beyond the self. That does not mean everyone needs to cure a disease, lead a movement, or build a monument visible from space. Contribution is often much smaller. You teach someone what you've learned. You make a difficult day slightly easier. You raise your child with patience. You repair something other people depend on. Or you create music, food, comedy, shelter, safety, beauty, knowledge, or relief. You leave a person, a place, or a system slightly better than you found it. The size of the action is not always what makes it meaningful. The direction matters. Meaning grows when some part of your life points beyond your own comfort. This also gives us a way to answer an important objection. If we create meaning ourselves, does that mean anything can be meaningful? Could someone declare that their purpose is collecting expensive spoons and refusing all further questions? Well, technically, yes. Human beings can attach significance to almost anything. But not every source of meaning is equally strong or durable. Some forms collapse the moment we stop receiving praise or pleasure or money or attention. Others deepen over time because they connect us to reality, to other people, and to something larger than our immediate ego. A meaningful life is not simply a life containing strong feelings. Obsession produces strong feelings, and so does jealousy. So does arguing online with a stranger whose profile picture is a truck. Durable meaning usually has structure. It helps us become more awake rather than more distracted, more connected rather than more isolated, more understanding rather than more confused, and more useful rather than permanently trapped inside ourselves. And then there is death, the part of the conversation everyone was hoping we could avoid. But mortality can make life appear meaningless. Everything ends, people disappear, achievements are forgotten. Eventually, even the most important meeting you attend will finally become irrelevant. But limitation may not erase meaning, it may actually create it. A song matters partly because it ends. A conversation matters because you eventually have to say goodbye. A decision matters because choosing one path means losing another. If time were unlimited, almost nothing would require courage or urgency. You could apologize in 300 years. You could start that project next millennium. And you could call your mother sometime after the oceans evaporate. But we do not have unlimited time. And because we do not, attention matters right now. Love must be expressed right now. Work worth doing must be attempted right now. Not because every day needs to be extraordinary. That is another exhausting standard we do not need. But most meaningful lives are built from ordinary actions repeated with intention. Pay attention, tell the truth, learn something, help someone, make something better, then do it again. You may never discover one final universal answer to the meaning of life. Maybe no sentence could contain it anyway. But you can create a pattern, a life in which you were awake for your own existence, a life in which other people knew you and were changed by knowing you, a life in which you understood more than you did before, a life that left behind slightly less suffering, slightly more beauty, or slightly more possibility. Perhaps the meaning of life is not something waiting at the end of the search. Perhaps it is what the search turns you into. And the real question is not what is the meaning of life? It is what pattern are you creating with yours? Thank you for listening, and please like and subscribe if this helped you at all, and share it with someone who needs to hear it.